In today's video, we're going to continue our NHL Season Preview series for the upcoming 18-19 season. Today's team we're discussing is the New York Rangers, and that's coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams, so if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So as I mentioned off the top here, today we're doing the season preview for the 18-19 season for the New York Rangers. In case you haven't caught any of our prior videos in the season preview series here, here's a quick breakdown on how we're going to do this. Segment 1, we're going to do a quick 17-18 season recap, take a deep dive and take a look at some of their team stats and see how they really did last year. The second segment, we're going to take a look at additions and subtractions, so we're going to see how the roster's changed, new players they brought in, players that have left, etc. In the third segment, we're going to take a look at their projected lineup that they're likely going to have on the ice here for opening night. And then in the final segment, I'll give you my thoughts and predictions on how I think the Rangers are going to fare this season. So let's jump in here and take a look at the 17-18 season recap. As we know, the New York Rangers did not have a fantastic 17-18 season. Partway through the year, they did issue a letter to fans outlining their vision for the future, which basically includes them going through a rebuild. They finished the season with a 34-39-9 record for 77 points, putting them in 8th place in the Metro Division. Now, leading into last season, that's certainly not where I would have had them pegged. I would have had them probably around 3rd or 4th place with, battling for a playoff spot. Before the 17-18 season began, I certainly would not have pegged the Rangers to be in 8th place and missing the playoffs by quite such a large margin here. Obviously, the season before, they were a playoff team. They won a round and went to the second round against the Ottawa Senators, where they fell short 4-2. But either way, their 16-17 season was pretty solid, so it was a drastic change year over year. The New York Rangers ended up scoring 231 goals last year, putting them 21st in the NHL. So obviously not a fantastic result, but considering everything they went through and all the trades that were made, overall though, I don't think that's all that terrible. While allowing 268 goals against for 28th best in the NHL. Obviously, as we know, by the end of the season, the New York Rangers defense was quite inexperienced, and obviously that certainly played a role in the goals against for sure. Henrik Lundqvist didn't have the best season, but certainly you could say the team in front of him certainly played a role in that as well. When the Rangers were able to score the first goal of the game, they did fare much better though last year. They had a record of 23-10-2, so obviously that's 35 times they scored the first goal, which is not often enough. But considering where everything was at last year, obviously scoring the first goal was an important piece for the Rangers. And when they did make that happen, a high percentage of the time they did go on to win the game. When the Rangers were leading after one period of play, they finished with a record of 15-7-2. So obviously there was not nearly enough times that they had a lead after the first period. And when they did, they didn't hold the lead as often as you would like. Obviously there's 9 different times compared to 15 that they either end up losing the game in regulation or in overtime. When leading after 2 periods of play, they did have a record of 22-0-1. So when they get a little deeper into the game, they were able to hold that lead into the 3rd period most of the time when they had it, except for one time when they ended up with an overtime loss. So obviously that's a pretty impressive and solid statistic. And obviously you want to be able to hold your leads in the 3rd period and not blow it and end up losing the game, especially in regulation. And obviously the bulk of the time they were able to get that done. When trailing the game after one period of play, they had a record of 4-24-5. So obviously they gave up the first goal too many times and were trailing too many times after the first period of play and just did not have the ability to often make that comeback. When trailing after 2 periods of play, they had a record of 5-33-4. So again, obviously 3rd period comebacks were not something we've seen a lot of last year. Now if you take a look at the breakdown here of scoring by period, which really gives you a good indication of how things went as the game went on. In the first period, they were outscored by their opponents by a score of 87-69. So obviously more often than not, like I said earlier, they were down after 1. In the second period of play, they were outscored by a margin of 88-72. So obviously that's a -16 in second periods, which is obviously not great either. 3rd periods were a little bit closer, but again in the negative, outscored by a score of 84-80 for a -4. So they were actually a minus in every period, which obviously is not a good result. They did fare much better in overtime though, scoring 7 times while only giving up 4. So a 7-4 record during the 3-on-3 overtime actually is pretty solid. So as we know, the Rangers did not fare the best last season, and these stats certainly indicate just that. They went through a lot of changes last year. Now let's take a look at their additions and subtractions and compare this roster last year to this year. Now, with most teams, normally I'd only talk about what they did during the offseason, but this team really went through a major transformation towards the end of the year near the NHL trade deadline. We saw players like Ryan McDonagh and JT Miller traded off to the Tampa Bay Lightning. We also saw guys like Rick Nash sent to Boston, Michael Grabner sent off to the New Jersey Devils. Obviously, during the offseason, we did see some other guys leave as well, like David Desharnais and Ondrej Pavelec. Those trades that I just mentioned did bring some players back that were newer to the lineup at the end of last year, so this will be their first full season, which will include guys like Ryan Spooner, Vladimir Nemestikov, as well as some other prospects who very well may have a chance to crack this lineup. Other notable additions to this Rangers roster for this season include Freddie Claesson, formerly of the Ottawa Senators. Claesson was an RFA this past year, but was not qualified, becoming a UFA, then signed with the New York Rangers. Claesson certainly had his moments over the past few years where he looked really solid and thought he would become a regular member of Ottawa's top six, but that's certainly not the case now. They opted to move into a new direction here. So I do think Freddie Claesson will have an opportunity to have more playing time and likely fulfill more of his potential with New York here. Now, the other notable addition to this Rangers lineup just happened here in the past few days as they made another trade with the Boston Bruins, acquiring veteran defenseman Adam McQuaid. So obviously, as we jump into the lineup here that we'll talk about momentarily, we'll see how all these guys will slot in. If you take a look at some rookies who could certainly make an impact this year, the two big ones are Elias Anderson and Filip Chytil. I fully suspect those two players to definitely make the team at a training camp 100%. Filip Chytil and Elias Anderson both play center ice, but it's possible they could decide to put them on the wing. But with Zibanejad and Hayes being the top two center icemen under contract right now, it is quite possible they could start the year playing bottom 6 minutes, but it wouldn't surprise me to see them get more and more playing time here as the year goes on, as they're both solid prospects and by far the two top rookies you can expect to have an impact here in the Rangers organization this season. So jumping over to the opening night lineup that we're likely going to expect here from the New York Rangers, obviously in goal you're going to have Henrik Lundqvist. Lundqvist likely will have another solid year for the Rangers. Obviously his numbers have been declining the past few years, but I do think he still has a lot left in the tank and can certainly be a solid goaltender for the New York Rangers. At this point in time, Pavelec, as we mentioned, is no longer with the organization, so the full-time backup this year should be Georgiev. Now your top six defense pair likely goes as follows. You're likely going to see Neil Pionk play with Brady Shea, and they're likely going to pair Freddie Claesson with Kevin Shattenkirk in the top four. At least that's my opinion on how they'll have it handled. Your bottom pair likely consists of Mark Stahl as well as Adam McQuaid, newly acquired here from the Bruins. Obviously, defenseman Anthony DeAngelo likely becomes a number 7 defenseman, and I would fully suspect he'll get a fair bit of playing time. Stahl and McQuaid have both been known to miss a fair bit of time here over the last number of years. So if that type of thing continues, then obviously DeAngelo, as well as some of the other prospect defensemen in the system, likely get more playing time. Jumping over to the forward group here, your first line likely is centered by Mika Zibanejad, with Matt Zuccarello on one side and Chris Kreider on the other. Your second line likely is consisted of Kevin Hayes, who was signed to a new one-year deal here during the past offseason, and he's likely flanked on his wing by Pavel Buchnevich and Vladimir Nemestikov. I do fully suspect rookie Filip Chytil to end up being the number 3 center, and I can likely see him playing with guys like Ryan Spooner as well as Jimmy Vesey. Now, of course, Spooner can play center as well, but I think he's more likely suitable as a winger with this roster. Your fourth line likely consists of center iceman Elias Anderson as well, another top solid rookie to keep your eye on for the Rangers this year. Likely he plays with guys like Fast and Lettieri on your fourth line. I do think it's quite possible we could see players like Anderson and Chytil move up at times during the lineup and certainly see some power play time to see what they're fully capable of. I know the Rangers are definitely committed to having their youth have a major opportunity this year to fully see what they're capable of and see how much improvement we can see in this roster this year. Now on to our final segment here where I give you my thoughts and projections for the upcoming 18-19 season, my predictions basically on where they're going to finish. If you followed my prediction series that we did a few weeks back here, when we did the Metropolitan Division standings, I did have the Rangers pegged to be in 6th place. Now obviously that is a bit of an improvement over last year where they finished 8th, and I do see the Rangers building a strong foundation here for a long time to come. They do have some pretty solid prospects in their system, and I'd be curious to see how they compare this year. I do think it's possible that they could end up doing better than other teams like the Islanders and the Hurricanes, but I don't see them moving up too much further in the standings. I think teams like Pittsburgh and Washington, Columbus, New Jersey are just too strong and too further ahead here in their progress that I think the best the Rangers can do this year at least will be 6th place. But like I said, I do see them building a much brighter future here with the Rangers. They've been building a lot of prospects and things. I do see the Rangers certainly developing a stronger foundation for more success in the future. They've done a pretty good job of building up their picks and prospects here. So we'll see how they do, but that's where I have them. I'd love to hear your comments down below. Where do you see the Rangers finishing here for the 18-19 season? What do you expect them to accomplish here for the coming season? If you're new to the channel here, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, and there's plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. So if you're new, hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button as well. I'd really appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.